And okay, back here. So once again, this is what we're going to be doing today. Should be fun. Any questions you have, feel free to write in the chat at any point. If you want access to the slides, you see that QR code in the top left corner. You take a picture, well, scan the QR code and it'll bring you right here. This is me, Matt Linden. Got a little smudged, but all good. This is my school, MS 137 School of Heroes in Ozone Park, Queens, New York. Any Queens, New York people in the house? Thumbs up if so. If not, all good. Yeah, Queens. All right, Nicole. Nicole, where are you from?
I'm not currently in Queens, but I have lived there in both Astoria and Jamaica Hills.
Oh, right on. So
my husband grew up in Queens.
Oh, awesome. And we have about 2,000 students. I guess we're a big middle school. So there's a lot of teachers. And when there are a lot of teachers, there are a lot of big ideas. And you'll see through this, we are very fortunate that there is a lot of buy-in from administrators. I know that that was a previous panel that was talked about how to get your admin to buy in and get them to approve and kind of accept what you're doing. And I'll talk about that a little bit as well. If you have questions regarding that and how what I'm going to show you has been approved and has been okayed in different ways. So I know that I was talking to Kate before and she had mentioned about my week. Last week, I had the pleasure and privilege to represent Reading with Pictures at New York Comic Con and coordinating the booth. And it was an incredible experience. And I really enjoyed that. And hopefully a lot of you who are in here might have met myself and my coworkers from MS 137 at the convention. So if so, hello again. And I'm looking forward to talking to you a little bit about the different ways to incorporate SEL. So now I want you to just stop and think and kind of write down in the chat, why are you interested in comics or graphic novels? Very like open question, but it's good to get us to think and the real reasons like why we got interested in the first place, because this is something that my students and maybe even your students, if any of you are teachers in here, think about. So I'll give you some time to think about it before you can write it in the chat, or just start by thinking about it. Awesome. Thank you, Kate. So if you want to send it to the Q&A, you can do that. Thank you, Carrie. Oh, that's really interesting that you said that, Nicole. I was thinking something similar to that. And it's really interesting because, you know, for us, like we've been through this for years, and we can remember past histories of comics and graphic novels when we were growing up in the 80s and 90s. And when we talk about that, for our students, like, what are you talking about? Or these are so old, or isn't that a TV show? Or wasn't that a movie? Like kind of like that. Is it my preferred format? That's excellent. Grew up a big comic fan. These are great reasons, and also pretty in line with not just me, but also my colleagues. And I think it's also in line with your students. Oh, I love this one. I've always struggled to focus on reading, so they are more engaging and approachable for me. This is so true. And that thought should really make you think about, if you are doing this with your students, that this is where a real interest lies. So comic books, this, like we've mentioned before, is a really unique ability to like break through something different. Students are going to be reading different novels over the course of the year, and whether, you know, whatever grade you're teaching, there's going to be reading for students, but comic books, they're reading, graphic novels, reading, anime, reading, manga, reading. These are all interesting to maybe not all of your students, but they're interesting to typically for me about 70% of my class each year. And it's an amazing number. It just so happens that that's the case, but this is a real engaging way to get them hooked to what you're doing in the class. And it doesn't even have to be ELA. And you'll see that because I don't teach ELA, I teach math. And you'll see how I use that in the classroom and the social emotional side as well. So about, I want to say 5 years ago, I knew that I was going to have this challenging group of students who were sixth graders the previous year. And by challenging, just had a hard time staying focused, getting into trouble outside of school, in the cafeteria. I knew this group. I had a feeling they were going to come to me, and look at that. They were mine. So I had to start thinking, like, if we are going to succeed, or maybe even me just getting through the school year, right? Just me surviving the school year, I needed to come up with something different. And I was at the time, and I still am, a co-teacher. I teach integrated co-teaching with another math teacher. And I also teach science. But I decided that it would be really nice to have books, and the specific books in the classroom would be comics, because I also had found out that a lot of those kids in that class were into superheroes and comics. So what better way to get some level of interest, reaching the students with my interests and their interests together? And this was the way to do it. So I decided that at Comic-Con that year, I want to say 5 years ago, that I was going to go and talk about my idea that I had started already and buy and ask for donations of comics. Fortunately, Royal Collectibles in Queens is not too far from the school in the Forest Hills area. So they were very helpful. I bought a lot of books from them. They also donated. And here we are, created a comic library. From then on, and now, as you can see what it looks like, I have this comic library in the classroom. There's about 300 comics in there. The students have the chance to take out comics. If you have access to if you scan the QR code and have access to these slides, if you see this comic library, I'm actually going to see if I could click the link. Oh, there we go. I'm going to click the link. It takes you to a comic library takeout form. So this is where kids will sign out a book and then sign it back in. You can take a look at it at your own time. I set it up so that I'm able to see them take it out, and it's been really successful so far. A lot of buy-in, and this is not even talking about teaching the curriculum, but the kids are really enjoying being in the classroom. And I think that's very important. At any point, if you have questions, please feel free to ask the questions. And also, Nicole, if you have any questions that come up, feel free as well.
Absolutely. And would it be okay if necessary, if I do see questions coming up, do you mind if I hop in and read them out loud? Would that be helpful?
I don't mind at all. That would be wonderful.
Okay, great. I will do that from now on. Thank you.
Yeah. So I took some pictures of the kids with their favorite comics or graphic novels, and they like to talk about it too. So it's good if you ever decide that, hey, maybe I want to do this. Definitely good to get a sense of what they like. I take advice and ask them, hey, which books did you like? What were your favorite? What's been your favorite series? Because what I typically do is I'll get a bunch of number ones, like you see Ant-Man #1, Captain America #1. And if the kids say, oh, this was really good, I'll go get #2 and #3 and 4 and 5. Because I say, oh, this is interesting. QR code seems not. Yes, I can post the URL during this for sure. Thank you. Oops. So to look at what the classroom looks like, the kids will see this poster in the middle, comic library. If they scan one of the QR codes that's in that comic library poster, it'll bring them to the takeout form. These others, if you see here, the Immortal Hulk, Ironheart, Naomi, if you scan those QR codes, it's a comic book trailer or a little like quick video about the comic, and not what they're going to read, but a little like sneak preview about the character. Naomi is a newer character from in the DC universe, and that's probably the favorite out of the comics in the comic library so far. So some student testimonials. I hope this plays. So we asked the kids what they liked about the comic library. What were their favorite comics?
I like reading comics because it interests me and gets me more hooked to reading. My favorite comic is Spider-Man, any type of comic Spider-Man.
Another one?
Comics are the only books that's fun.
What are your favorite comics to read? So seems fun, engaging to read. That's the main like theme that I got from my students, and these were my students from last year who were very into the comic library. And this was just a way to, like I've said numerous times, keep them engaged in the classroom, especially our kids were staying in the classroom and the teachers were coming to them versus them leaving. So this was a big, I said that they could take out the comics during the waiting period from one teacher to the next. They would take it during lunch, probably read it, bring it back, or wait till they get home, read it, and then take out another one. Now, in terms of when they're in the classroom, I like to do these self-checks. So like, how are you feeling? Now, this is talking about like the social emotional side of it, that you can do that, how you are feeling, and then pick an emoji, which is great. I like to do something a little different. So this year I've been using Spider-Man. So and I know there's a lot going on here. And this is a fun mood meter for kids. Sometimes I'll focus it on like, how are you feeling just in general? Or how are you feeling about simplifying expressions or multiplying and dividing integers, which is what we're doing. So this is something that you can use to help you out and get you to get a sense of what your kids are feeling at any point, whether it's like related to the curriculum or just the social emotional side. Hope I didn't start anything. So my actual class will look like this. We have the learning target and everything, but you know, if you just put a learning target, which is what the kids are going to do, and the problem of the day, like, okay, you know, great, grand and all, but I definitely would recommend some pizzazz. Of course, it's got to be your personality. My personality is pizzazz, so I bring in my interests. So this realm, this medium, I throw in a lot. This was for May 4th, May the 4th be with you. So it was all Star Wars stuff. Because of that, some of the graphs actually, the graphing project was graphing R2-D2 by plotting points. So using music, but also coming up with ways to use this medium as a discussion protocol. So I know this is part of like on the teaching side, but this is when kids see this, they're like, oh, this is cool. I want to be a part of this. So solo for Han Solo. Solo is when the kids work on their own. The pair, R2-D2 and C3PO, when they pop up, kids work in pairs. The squad, they go to groups of 4 or 5. These are just like fun ideas to get them engaged in like working together. And, you know, you might have kids who just would rather work on their own, but then you have those who would work together. So this is a cool way, and you can kind of, you know, splice this out however you'd like. But, you know, hopefully I'm giving you some ideas here. Also putting them in the actual problems. So this is a station activity related to getting comic books from Royal Collectibles and giving different like groups of superheroes. They like seeing, they're like, oh, you have each of these comics in this classroom. Look at that. So social emotional learning is wonderful because you can put it in your curriculum, but also it does not have to be. It can be inserted in. And during the pandemic, I realized that, of course, it was a different, like we were doing remote learning. So in order to engage my students, I started to invite people of different walks of life into my classroom. I still have these guest visits. Now they're a little more in person. But what these guest visits are is because in the 7th grade in New York City, we would have a college and career awareness. They called them, it was College Access for All. That's what it was called. But then when the pandemic hit, couldn't do that anymore. So I decided from 2 years ago on to have remote guest visits and now in-person guest visits. Actually, John Shableski, for those of you who know John or work with John, if you're from Reading with Pictures, John was my first guest visit right before the pandemic. And he talked about making and being a part of graphic novels and manga and going to Comic Cons. And man, the kids loved it. So from there, I was like, I got to do more of this. So from John and then other people in the medium, the animators of Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, they've spoken to my kids each of the last 2 years. And then a bunch of people from Marvel Comics, Jim Zub, Matthew Rosenberg, and a lot of others. It's been really nice. And that's another way to just think, maybe bringing people in from this walk of life, especially if I have students who are interested in this. So that's another way to really hook that emotional side of them. And also they can see, because you probably, if you have a group of 30, out of that 30, whoopsie daisy, out of that 30, I would say that at least there are at least 8 to 10 kids in there who have a really high interest in art. And when they see this and they see that you can have a career in art, it's a real like big thought bubble. So these are just some ideas, ways that I've used social emotional learning in the classroom. I want to give some time for thoughts and questions. Nicole, or do you have any questions, or have there been any questions in the Q&A just yet?
Nothing new just yet, but if we wanted to invite folks to type them in, I will be happy to moderate and read them aloud while you answer.
Awesome. So you know what I'm going to do now? There is more to discuss. Whoops. I want to just go back to getting in. Let me see. I'm going to make sure, pretty sure this is shareable for everybody.
And
Yeah.
when you're ready, Matt, we do have a question in the Q&A.
Oh, excellent. Excellent. I am ready.
That comes from John, and he asks, how did you begin reaching out to the creatives?
Oops, hold on. Let me go. Reaching out to the creatives. You mean
I believe
people?
that's in reference to your guest speakers who you
Oh,
had
okay.
coming in and speaking with your students.
Yes. Okay, awesome. So how did I go through that process? That was a fun one. So what happened was I'm going to go to the next slide because this is related. So I work with a teacher who's right here. Her name is Danielle Monach, and she, in previous years, would bring different writers into the classroom. And the reason why is if you take a look at these lockers that are in the bottom right corner. She hand painted these lockers with the covers of graphic novels and popular YA stories. And when she would put that up, and I have the links of that later on, she got a lot of interest and people wanted to come into the class and meet the students. And they would also sign their name on their cover. So like Nick Cross has come to our school, Jerry Kraft has come to our school, Marco Shiro, and they still have a really good connection. So it started with that. So then I wanted to do that. I went to Comic-Con in 2019 and I met John, and I got even more interested in that. And I brought John in and he spoke to the kids, like I said, and then I wanted to do more. But then when the pandemic hit, it kind of slowed things down. So I waited till remote learning in the 2020, 2021 school year. And what I decided to do was I didn't ask for permission. You know, what's that saying? Like, don't ask for permission, beg for forgiveness instead. I don't know if that's it, but it sounds good to me. I decided to create an email template. And what I did with this email template was pretty much send it out to whoever I could. I started out just like creating a Twitter, MS137, Mr. Linden Twitter account. And I would find people who had their direct messages opened. And with this template, I sent it out to everybody. I sent it out to local politicians. I sent it out to people in the comic book world. I started off with that because that was my interest. That process, what it was like, it was relaxing at first because it was just like, here you go, like maybe I'll get some hits. But then when I started getting a lot of hits, then it was like, ooh, okay, I have to make this easier for myself. So I had one guest visit. It was a local politician, and I sent all like the Zoom information to my principal and my admin team. And I didn't ask for permission. I just did it. And they all came in because they wanted to be a part of it. It was like, oh, let's meet our local politician. We'll make friends with him. And it went really well. The kids loved it. So what I usually do with it is the person will talk for like 10 to 15 minutes or even 15 to 20. And then I save time for questions and answers. And the questions and answers part is wonderful because it's all students. Before the actual meet, I give kids the time I create a Google sheet and they put their questions in the Google sheet. Of course it changes, but they have it populated so that if they ever forget what questions they have or they want to edit their questions, they go into that. So then there were different comic book people. Danny Fingeroth from Marvel Comics in the 80s and 90s was probably my next, and then just kept going. And then I even shot bigger. I had some cool people. Layla Ali was Muhammad Ali's daughter. She Zoomed with our class. Giada from the cooking channel. She Zoomed with our class. Flavor Flav from Public Enemy. He Zoomed with us. So it was really cool. And then from there, I saw how the kids lit up for these. So I couldn't stop. It's one of these things though, like when you do it, it's hard to just put it down because you see like the big smiles on their faces for these types of experience. All right, Nicole, I'm seeing other questions. I'm gonna answer each of them if you don't mind.
Okay, you're good with that? You're
Yeah.
following? Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So are there other teachers like you who are using comics in their classroom? What is their approach? That's a really good question. So yes, there are. In these slides, there are other teachers in my school I know of who use comics and graphic novels in the classroom. I'm gonna kind of see if I can like just peruse through. These are the pictures of Jerry Kraft being in our school and drawing for the kids. But in terms of using it, these are some other examples. There are ELA teachers who use comic books as part of the ELA curriculum. So they are in 7th grade, they read The Outsiders. So using their knowledge from The Outsiders and their understanding character traits, as well as learning about how comics are drawn and created, the teachers, there's multiple teachers who do this. Using those character traits, the kids create the comic book version of their favorite character from The Outsiders. That's another way. There've been a lot of the visual arts teachers do a lot of that. So just really going through these slides here from what people do at my school in MS 137, and I'm sure that there are other schools as well. Let me go through here. Like there's a lot of student work of like creating their own comics and using what we know in comics to kind of create our own thing or make connections to comic book characters and characters from the story. In terms of the teacher's approach, there's two things with this. One, it's like, of course, you want to have that same interest. Like these teachers, their approach is like they love comic books and this medium, so they're going to go for it. But you do have to have buy-in. You do have to have the support of your admin and the support of the people who are writing and looking over your curriculum and the curriculum maps. So it definitely creates a conversation. So in terms of like using it in the classroom, you definitely just want to have like, this is when the okay has to come in, but you need to have the buy-in from your administrators. I love the question for 402. I don't know. Have you followed your students as they move up, given their comic interest? I have. So a batch of them will follow me on Twitter and write down things that they see, or on Instagram now. When I was at Comic-Con, I was getting some messages from former students, and there's a lot of them who are really getting into like the creating world and creating caricatures and like comic strips. In terms of going to schools for that, I do have a few students that have gone to school, gone to high schools that focus on the arts. Unfortunately, I'm trying to think here. This is my first, okay, this will be my first class in college from MS 137, because this is my 7th year. So they're in 7th grade. I'm doing the math. Now the kids I had my first year as 7th graders, now they are in college. So I would have to follow up on the college side. That would probably be a good thing to do next year, like this year and next year. But there are, when they move up, I do see like more kids interested in comics and graphic novels going from 7th to 8th grade with this, for sure. Afterwards, like the number might change, but definitely when I hear from their 8th grade teachers, they're like, oh, they loved the comics. So that's always something that's brought up. So the most recent question I see is a wonderful question. I would like to know, for the people who are in here, you can put this in the Q&A or in the chat, how many of you have used comics in your classroom, any capacity? Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really good piece of advice. I would love to follow up on that. The comment was, it would be great to follow for some, like interviewing them on how comics help them succeed. That's a really good idea. But going back, Nicole, how have you used comics in your class in the past?
I have. I work with children who are 3 to 5 years old for the most part. And one of the things that we were doing with them, kids who are at the kindergarten level, we would do something called Think, Draw, Write, Read, where we would ask them to, come up with a very, very simple narrative, just like I'm talking maybe 3 sentences or so or less. And they would dictate it to us, the teacher. We would write it down in highlighter, and then they would write over the highlighter in pencil. So that helps them practice their skills with narrative, and it helps them practice their handwriting and other things. And then I adapted that to make it into something like a 3-part narrative, so that instead of just explaining one thing, I would give them some prompts to explain something with a beginning, middle, and end. And instead of drawing a single image to go with it, which was part of the original framework for that assignment, I would do it in 3 parts to make it like a sequential piece. And sequential, putting story pieces in order and sequencing, even at a visual level, is a really big thing at the preschool level. And so, I like to think and talk about how that has a comics visual storytelling element to it.
I love that. And that so between how you use it, Nicole, and also the question that was brought up about connecting with other educators, like we talked about this with other educators when we were at the booth in Comic-Con, and I had a discussion with my principal about this more this year. Like, this is something that's definitely like on the forefront of our minds, that we have some, like, I guess, sister schools or middle schools and high schools that our school works closely with. And there are some teachers now who are starting to use comics more in the class. And their principal used to be assistant principal in my school. So their principal was like, I would like for you to connect with this school. So we're in the early stages. So that is something that we are definitely interested in doing. And that's probably going to happen this year, to develop that community of inquiry around comics and like supporting teaching and learning. I know that next month we are having one of those schools come into our school, and I'm hoping that they can come into my classroom so I could just show them like what it's like, and maybe have a couple of kids talk to them about the comic library. So I'm gonna go back. That's really, Nicole, that's really it for me. And everybody, that's really it. This is my these are my contacts. This is an email you can reach me at. You can also reach me at Twitter and Instagram. And these are some resources on here. Pixton is great to use for creating comics as part of the curriculum. There's another thing I didn't really get into, but I've used it in science before to create storyboards for the kids, like especially the cells unit. But you can do it for a lot of different for a lot of different subjects. And then the BuzzFeed article about how our school has used graphic novels, and about the teacher who created those lockers, or painted over our once ugly lockers. Thank you, Nicole. Does anybody have any other questions? I hope I answered everybody's questions.
I'm not seeing any new questions in the Q&A or the chat. I did want to follow up on the question earlier about posting a URL for the QR code that wasn't working.
Yeah.
If that's something you wanted to consider putting into the chat directly, if people want to copy and paste it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that now. Perfect. All right, so you can reach me here. Let me stop sharing. I want to thank everybody and hope that you have some ideas of different ways to use it. You can communicate with me at any of these links. And it was great speaking to you all, and I hope you have a great rest of your virtual convention.
Thank you so much.